I'd like to introduce you now to our next session, which is with Scott Kube. Scott, would you take a couple seconds and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Jess. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Cygnus Systems. We're a IT and voice over IP provider to small and mid-sized businesses, and we've been in the space for 32 years helping small and mid-sized businesses. We've been a partner with you guys for some time, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone.
We appreciate having you. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let you kick it off. For missing calls could be costing you up to $10,000 a month.
Thanks. Just share my screen. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining me and sticking with this. Really, I did a bit of research and found some staggering statistics that I wanted to kind of share with you, and then a way to kind of solve that issue, if you will. So without further ado, you're probably asking, who are you? As I mentioned, been in the space technology for over 20 years. Cygnus has been helping companies for over 32. I have been with Cygnus for 10 years now, and prior to that, spent another, 10 to 15 years in the technology space, and that's also been within the telephony side of things as well. So you can kind of see some of the additional credentials that I list there. I don't read those to you. But in preparation for this, I did quite a bit of research looking at a few different sources and kind of came up with some numbers that you may be well aware of. The first one was from an article in Storable talking about average occupancies, and that was from 2020, so it might be a little bit low compared to today with 40 to 45%. The average monthly rental fee in 2020, based on some numbers from Sparefoot across all the different types of storage facilities, was $89.12 a month. That was up 1.39% from 2019. According to a study done by Neighbor, now it was back in 2017, so a little bit old, but they said that the average customer stays with you all for 14 months. Obviously, there's quite a bit that will stay longer, some that may stay shorter, but that was the average that they found. And then if you just do some basic math and take that 89.12 and times 14 months, that means an average customer is going to bring in, a little over $1,240 to you. Then in that same study from 2017 by Neighbor, they said 34% of the first contacts to your business are via the telephone, and unbelievably 40% go unanswered. And even if that's a little bit lower, whether it's 20, 30, or 40, that's still an amazing number, and wonders how the hell do I get the phone answered. I ran a few numbers. I used $1,240 because the math's a little bit easier to follow. But if you get 10 calls in terms of new customers, potential customers calling your business, and if you miss 40% of those, obviously you miss 4 of those calls. And if you were able to close every single one of them, that would mean just under $5,000 in missed revenue that you missed from that inefficiency. Obviously, you can see then I took that same type of math and did it if you did, as an example, 20 calls or 50 calls. You can use whatever number makes the most amount of sense for your business. But that 20 call is just under 10 grand, and 50 calls, you can see that's almost $25,000 in missed opportunity. So really, you kind of go back a bit and say to yourself, how are we answering the phones? And at a very high level, there's in essence, I guess, 3 ways that you all could be doing it. You could have outsourced your management completely to one of the management companies that operate within the self-storage space. And hopefully then that they're answering 100% of the calls. You also could be doing it yourself from a management, but opting for a service to answer those calls, and that might be anywhere from 59 cents to $1.30 per call. Hopefully, if you're doing that, they're answering 100%, but certainly worth looking into. But then really wanted to kind of take a look at if your staff were answering those calls. And if that's the case, there's really kind of 2 ways to do that. One would be to have an older on-premise phone system, and there's lots of variations on that. And another way would be to have a newer kind of cloud-based phone system, in essence, where somebody calls in, and in either scenario, The idea is that they would get to speak with a live human being, answer their questions, hopefully set up a time to either take a look and or book the self-storage facility that you're trying to promote and sell. When I consider how you guys differentiate, I look at three main facets. Location, that's fixed, if you will. Obviously, you could build or buy new locations, but it is what it is. You've got your current facilities, and you may differentiate on that. And certainly there's technology and things that you can do that are going to require capital investment, probably take a little bit longer in most instances in order to affect change. But really, kind of like Kyle was talking about, is how can we affect customer service? As he mentioned, they look at things and try and focus quite a bit on customer service. And that's really not different than most businesses. On our side of things, that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, is the ability to service the customer, which is really what we're going to kind of focus on for the remainder of the discussion. Now, in most instances, you would say, if I'm going to improve customer service, that's usually going to require more money. But in this case, I'm actually, if you went to a cloud-based phone system from an on-premise-based phone system, we could put forth to you that you would greatly enhance your ability to improve customer service, but save 30 to 50% on the telco spend that you're currently looking at right now. And really how you do that is there's two facets to it. So this diagram kind of shows how a cloud-based phone system works. In essence, if you have an older on-premise system, you may have a couple of different types of connections coming into your building. That could be something called POTS, which is plain old telephone service. Seems kind of a stupid acronym, but that's what it is. It's those old copper wires, and if you have those, you've probably seen year over year, those prices continue to rise, and they will continue to do so. All of the phone companies, none of them want to sell that type of stuff. So they're going to continue to increase the price on that. And, when the caller comes in, that's how they're transferred in. There's other ways to do that if you've got an on-premise phone system. But this diagram is looking particularly at how a cloud-based phone system would work. And if you go to the far right side, that would be a customer of yours calling in from a mobile phone, most likely. Could be, I guess, a landline if they're a little bit older, perhaps. But in essence, what's going to happen is that call gets routed through the public switch telephone network like it always would, but it's then going to get answered by a phone system that sits in the cloud rather than something that sits at each of your different sites or your office. And what's enabled by that is a couple of things. One is now we're able to use an application that would use on a smartphone, or a something that could run on a Windows desktop, if you will, as well, but more often than not on a smartphone. So with that call, if they're calling store A for you, that individual, her or his phone would ring just like normal, and they would answer that call through their smartphone or an application that would be on their smartphone and be able to service the customer right then and there. However, I know these times it's difficult to maintain staff. It's also important not to have overstaff. So we had one storage facility that we work with, and what they did is they were able to, when that individual at property A was busy showing a unit, for example, she or he could mark themselves as busy, and in which case that call, instead of going to an answering machine, could go to property B or property C, in which case either one of those individuals could take the call and then speak with the human being, the customer on the other side, answer the questions they have, schedule whatever they need to do, and leverage technology in order to ensure that we get that person-to-person customer response that we want. So some of that cost benefit then is in enabling not necessarily having to use phones, but some additional technology, and just the efficiencies of this technology that are able to help you save costs. The other kind of neat benefit is if people are making outbound calls, instead of them using their mobile phone, which could be a personal device, in which case that caller ID when they call your customers would be their personal cell phone number. If they use the app, we're able to send out the business one. So if that individual were to leave your organization, The number that the customers have is the number that you want them to have, which could be either the main number for your all of your properties and or that facility number specifically. So hopefully that kind of gives you an encapsulation on how that system works, and you can save money and increase customer service so that you're not missing 20, 30, 40% of those opportunities and potentially over $10,000 a month. Each situation is a little bit different, so I'm happy to talk with people on an individual basis. My number here is listed. That's that 248-849-9710. That's my direct number. You can also email me at scottk@cygnussystems.com. And if you just want to check out our website, it's cygnussystems.com. Feel free to peruse there if you like, and hopefully that'll provide you with some additional information as well. I appreciate your attention. I thank you for participating and would welcome the opportunity to speak with any of you further.
Scott, you gave us some really great information. 40% unanswered calls. I mean, that number kind of makes, I think, every owner operator get a little sick to their stomach, right? Like those are your marketing dollars at work generating you all of this potential revenue just to kind of let it drip out of the bucket. So that's amazing. Thank you for that information. Also, I had a question for you.
Sure.
If we're moving from a plain old telephone system or POTS and we're kind of going into the cloud-based system, what would that look like for the owner operator in the transition? What are the pain points? What should they be aware of? So
really, there's very little. So most of the time, you're going to leverage the internet connection that they normally would have, whether that's like a cable circuit, like a Comcast or Spectrum as an example, and you're just going to kind of go over top of that. There could be a small amount of downtime that would tend to get scheduled when you're porting the numbers from one provider to another, but that's usually pretty minimal, 15 minutes, 30 minutes on average, just because usually you're looking at, for those properties, not many phone lines on a site-by-site basis. So it's a pretty minimal disruption and can be some dollar savings that kind of go right to the bottom line.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Again, we'd like to thank Scott Kube, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Cygnus IT Systems.